Hello and welcome to Central Georgia Focus, the Ask Mayor Miller edition. Each month we sit down with Macon-Bibb County Mayor Lester Miller and ask him questions sent in by you and the journalist at the Center for Collaborative Journalism. Welcome back, Mr. Mayor. Thank you again for sharing your time with us. You know, the tax digest, the sum of all the taxable property in Macon-Bibb County, ought to be complete by now. So what are you hearing about Macon-Bibb County's growth since last year, and how will it affect our millage rate?
Well, I think we should get the information back from Wade McCord. I had a conversation with him yesterday, so by the end of the week, I think we'll get the preliminary tax digest back to us. We'll look at that information. We've been discussing that for over a month now. There's still some appeals pending. So, outside of those appeals, we do believe that we've had substantial growth in the tax base, probably some 14–15%. But I think the commissioners will do like we always do, at least recently. We'll be rolling the millage rate back just once again.
Do you have any idea how many points that will be at this point, or you just need those final figures?
Yeah, we need the final figures. I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere near what we did last year. We rolled back 2 mills last year. So if we did the same this year, we'd be in effect rolling back 7 mills this year instead of the 5 that we were required to do by law.
Well, the Macon-Bibb County School Board, the Bibb County school system that you used to be president of the board, just voted this week to roll back their growth in their tax digest. So were you surprised by that?
Not really. I had some conversations with a lot of my former board members there. They had to make some tough decisions, and that's always a little bit different when you're sitting in that chair. But honestly, there's some things that have to be done before you can go back and either accept the millage rate or even increase the millage rate. So I think they haven't done enough that's necessary to convince taxpayers that they've made all the cuts they need to before they go back to them. So I think they're going to do that over the next year. They're going to have that hard conversation about consolidation schools and possibly rezoning to make things a little bit more easier on their budget.
Of course, they had been already talking about possibly closing some schools. What other things do you think they could do to be more financially viable?
Well, there's always a lot of things. We cut a lot when I was there. You can always look at freezing the travel expenses. You can look at minimizing some other things, improvements that you do around there to help with your maintenance costs. They can look at a way to use the ARP funds perhaps to help with their budget by grant funding some of the positions they normally would fund. There's a lot of things you can do. Perhaps consolidation of schools is a great way because you consolidate some things like that. Eliminate some of the consultants. I know consultants, people always like to have a consultant to tell you the best practices and things like that, but in tough times you have to eliminate those consultants. So I do think there's a lot of ways they can work around having to increase the taxes, but they're there in those seats all the time and they do the work on a daily basis, so we'll let them do their job.
Yeah, the consultants came up at the same time as they were voting to roll back the increase. And talking about spending priorities for the county now, we have a question from Bo Parrott about the pay compression for county employees. He says that you promised a minimum wage increase, which happened, but with the pay compression so that the existing employees would get a little bit of bump up, those who were already making above minimum wage. He wants to know what happened to that plan and also the merit raises that you spoke about on the campaign trail.
Yeah, well, I've already spoke to Bo Parrott. He's an employee of ours, so I don't really want to get into our conversations about that. We certainly have raised the minimum rate to $15. We have, once you have that, when you raise somebody to 15, there are some people that right below that. Mr. Parrott has received numerous raises over the last several years, like many other people. But the problem is you can't price yourself out of it. We are right now in kind of uncertain times with a recession possibly looming, and we're going to maintain conservative fiscal sound policy. We want to start at the bottom and we'll push the way up. We have given some raises over the last couple of years, public safety being one of those. Other places like your solid waste, your public works, park beautification, those wages have been low for a long period of time. So at some point in time, you're going to hit a wall. You can only elevate so far. So we're going to continue to do that. We have looked at salaries compared to the last salary scale we did. There's some wide ranges, and we feel comfortable that everyone's in those ranges and hopefully going to give them some upward mobility. What we said is we're going to go back and visit those changes on the salaries in mid-year, in the mid-year adjustment. We want to get through this next several months to make sure that nothing happens in the United States to set us back, and we want to be in good financial condition here locally in Bibb County.
I know the financial planners that govern the pension boards and the retirement have been warning about something that could be happening. So I guess it's just kind of a work in progress, and we'll wait and see how it goes. The 2018 SPLOST schedule, the collections are running ahead of schedule, so that's good on the economic front. But there's still one big ticket item to be resolved, and that's the courthouse. Now, instead of proceeding with a new courthouse, it sounds like that architects are currently looking at ways to improve the current courthouse, and with a major renovation project. How do you think that that could alleviate the issues that were initially raised for the SPLOST campaign the last time?
Well, I think the last SPLOST was passed was that there was no requirement that you build a new courthouse. Certainly they wanted to do that, but in this environment, particularly about the suppliers and the demand for everything, the cost had almost doubled. What they allocated $40–50 million for back then was probably $100 million there. We're trying to be very frugal with our money, and that's why we've had the Juvenile Justice Center. That's why we look for other parking alternatives. That's why we have 2 courtrooms over at the mall. That's why a future jail expansion would involve courtrooms there for your travel. So a lot of things go into play. I think with the remaining funds that we have, we'll be able to use that, value engineer that in such a way to accomplish all the goals for security, for safety, for additional room there at the courthouse. We've already got a new courtroom being built up at State Court that we allocated some funds. I know the DA wants some changes made to her office as well as grand jury rooms. So I think we're going to be able to move that entrance around to the Mulberry Street side and do all that with the remaining funds so we can actually use all the funds that we're supposed to for that project.
I know when I go to the courtrooms on that side by that little annex where the glass is on Mulberry Street, there seems to always be like something in the floor, like drying something out for leaks or something. So, I mean, that would just kind of remake that whole entryway, like possibly an escalator and things like that, just kind of bridge the gap really and over to the Grand Opera House, right?
Well, to make it more safe and secure, but it also, when you have days where you have a lot of jurors that show up, a lot of times they're just winding down the road out there in the heat or the cold or whatever rain it may be. This is going to allow them to all get into the building before they have to go through all this security. So we get them out of the elements into the building, but also it provides a lot more room because, as you know, there's 4 or 5 floors there that we have to work with. So I think we're going to keep the bones of that building, the courthouse that we have for a long period of time. We've been taking care of a lot of the leaks and some of the issues they had in the basement, but most importantly, the safety and security of not only the people who work there, but the people who visit there on a regular basis to do their civic duties.
All right, well, when we come back, we'll talk more about how the county is spending your extra penny on the dollar with other SPLOST projects, so stay tuned. Welcome back to Central Georgia Focus, the Ask Mayor Miller edition, your monthly opportunity to ask questions of Macon-Bibb County Mayor Lester Miller. We were talking a little bit about the courthouse renovations, but also a part of the 2018 SPLOST was the city auditorium, and we're now in the second phase of that renovation. We've already handled the ceiling and all of that, and now, new chairs, all kinds of stuff going on, and then there's phase 3 with bathrooms coming. Are you pleased with that project so far?
So far, I think everyone is pleased with the project. We still have some work to do, and once again, we're trying to value engineer. When they set aside those funds back in 2017-18, when they passed the SPLOST, they wasn't counting on prices increasing as much. So we have to do a lot more work with a little bit less money. So we've been very good about doing that. The concerts there have been awesome. They've been selling out, a lot of them, and we have a lot of them. Some of the best years we've ever had, according to people who go to the concerts all the time. So we're very excited about that. Getting ready for round 3, and we know that's going to happen very soon, so we're excited about it. And I think people are starting to see the changes there.
The city auditorium was the city's centennial gift to itself 100 years ago, and now the Bicentennial Committee has just launched their 200 for 200 campaign to raise money for the Bicentennial Park. What are the plans for that over in the East Macon Arts Village off of Main Street there?
Well, I think the Bicentennial Commission has done an excellent job of raising money. They've also got a very diverse crowd that represents all parts of Macon-Bibb County. So you've got a lot of input there. I don't want to step on their toes about what's going to happen over there. That's their plan. We're certainly going to support that. But just outside what we believe is going to be the new national park over there, we're looking to have a Bicentennial park there. Just a small appreciation of the 200-year celebration that we've had that everyone can remember, and getting back to our indigenous roots back in the day. So I think this is something that's very positive for our community. They put a lot of hard work in there, and I can't wait to see the finished product.
Okay, you brought it up, and this was the next question too. What is the status of the Okmulgee Mounds becoming a national park? Just seems like everybody says we're on the brink, but yet we're just waiting and waiting and waiting.
Well, you're always on the brink as long as it's on the topic. I think everybody's minds, and a lot of work has been doing behind the scenes. It doesn't just happen overnight. As you know, this has been happening for a long period of time. We do believe that we're at the right time and the right place to get this accomplished. All of our delegation up in D.C. are for it. We've got folks on both sides of the aisle, Senate Republicans, House Democrats, and vice versa. We have them working together, all pulling in the same direction. So we're very excited about it. It'll happen when it happens. I think we may have two bills, one on the House and one on the Senate, that may be coming through about the same time. But it's a lengthy process, and certainly the U.S. has a lot of issues going on in the national picture right now. We need to make sure that Macon-Bibb County continues to be a part of the conversation.
I know you had hoped too to have a big celebration at the amphitheater for the end of the bicentennial year, but it looks like now that the project probably won't be completed until February. Is that your understanding with that?
Well, I still believe we're going to have a big celebration at the amphitheater, so there may be some more information that's coming on that in the very near future. But we're excited about making some announcements here in the next couple of months on our next year and what acts may be performing there at the amphitheater. So we're moving along, great progress there. I'm getting weekly updates and something we can all be excited about. So I think people are going to really be surprised at how much that project takes off in the very near future.
Somebody was telling me too about just a dramatic hanging of that beam, how it was on the ground and it had to go up and just fit into little bolts or something, and that it was just kind of a miraculous thing to watch.
Yeah, it's going to be one of the largest expanded areas that you have across the United States, 333 feet between column to column. That's a large area. A football field could fit in between there. It just shows you the technology that we have and the experience we have there with our designers, but also it means everywhere in the whole amphitheater you will have no obstructions to the stage, which is something that people look for all the time.
Of course, GPB's Grant Blankenship asked, who's going to be the opening act, Mayor?
Well, Grant knows. I sent him an email. He should know that by now.
Oh, he already knows that. He's been keeping it tight-lipped.
If you want to know, ask Grant. He has all the information.
And you want to give him his cell phone number,
That's right?
For people to call. No, I mean, I know you're still working on that. But of course, one of our biggest stars from Macon, Jason Aldean, has been mired in a controversy in recent times because of his release of the music video, Try That in a Small Town. And in the aftermath, Sonny Hostin on The View said that Macon was a racist city. How do you respond to that?
Well, I didn't realize The View was still on. I thought that had been canceled a long time ago, but I guess it perhaps is still out there. But, I really don't respond to things like that. That's just trash. Everybody that comes through Macon, we don't create our image and the top this and the top that across the United States for positive reasons to have someone talk about that. It's just really a non-issue. Everybody here in Macon knows where we come from, what we stand for, all the things we've accomplished over the last several years. So I think our actions speak for themselves, and we're proud to be a part of that.
Have you talked to Mr. Aldean, or has he reached out to you since this has gone on?
No, certainly not. I know his music from the radio, but I certainly not best friends with Jason Aldean. No, he's from Macon. At least he was at some point in time. But no, we haven't had those conversations. But I understand that his song, for whatever reason, is taking off the top of the charts these days, and they're getting a lot more momentum than he probably would have otherwise. So sometimes you have to be careful what you ask for.
And some people have made the comparison too that with what went on with those anti-Semitic demonstrations and how our community responded, that really kind of don't try that in our town. So is that kind of that sentiment, or do you have a thought about that song? Or?
Well, I really don't have a thought about the song, but I do know that people are passionate on both sides of that. We're going to keep doing what we're doing here in Macon-Bibb County. Certainly we have close to 160,000 people. I don't think that's a small town in the United States. And we continue to have the most diverse community that I see around it, and that's our strength, and I think we're going to continue to do that. So we're proud of everybody that comes out of Macon, and certainly sometimes they're going to have challenges, but it's something we can't overcome. And right now I think Macon's in the upward trajectory, and we don't let people in New York and other places tell us what kind of people we are here in Macon.
Well, here's something a little bit more black and white, maybe just a little shade of gray in a question, but Stephen Huff has a city easement that's parallel to a sewage line, he says, in his backyard, and the street drain runs into that easement. So is it the county's responsibility to keep it clean? He says that he's seen county workers on a neighbor's property cleaning out the small ditch. So whom should he check with about that?
Typically he would this day and age, he would check with the Macon Water Authority. They handle all the stormwater issues. We transferred all that property to them a few years ago, and that was an agreement that was made under the previous administration. So that's one of those things, Macon Water Authority would be his first stop. If for some reason Macon in the past voluntarily cleaned or took care of an easement, then of course it may continue to do that. So every parcel is different. They're not cookie cutter properties. So I would tell him to talk to the Macon Water Authority regarding the stormwater issues there. And if there's some issue that we need to take care of, they will forward that information to us.
In the last SPLOST, of course, there was some money earmarked for stormwater. Do you think there will be in the next SPLOST?
Well, there's been some conversations about that. Of course, the last SPLOST had all that money for stormwater, but we contractually obligated ourselves to give all that to the Macon Water Authority. So it's just a pass-through. Bibb County is not using that for stormwater. We pass it through the Macon Water Authority. I suspect we'll have some conversations over the next year about the SPLOST projects, and that could be something that's considered. But at the same time, they're charging a stormwater fee per household, per cubic feet for businesses, and that's been a whole other conversation. So hopefully they'll have sufficient funds to take care of all the needs. But we like to collaborate with people, and we're a willing partner, so we're going to do our best to make sure everybody's taken care of.
All right, well, stay with us. We'll be back with more of your questions on this Ask Mayor Miller edition of Central Georgia Focus. Welcome back to Central Georgia Focus, the Ask Mayor Miller edition. Mr. Miller, we've been talking about, the economy and things like that too in conjunction with taxes, but affordable housing continues to be hard to come by. And Cherie Bell is concerned about boarding houses that can rent for $135 a week in her neighborhood for up to about 8 to 10 people, she said. She says it's a haven for drugs, domestic violence, and there's illegal firearm discharges. Are these houses even legal, and are they inspected, and what kind of enforcement mechanism is there out there?
So planning and zoning handles all the potential issues we have with boarding houses. So you should contact planning and zoning if you think there's one in your neighborhood. There are certain things that they have to do to meet the qualifications. A lot of times they're not allowed in certain neighborhoods, so that's something that you need to look at through planning and zoning. Also, we get some conversations from time to time from people making complaints that live in these houses because they're very poorly kept. The maintenance is not there, the AC is not there, the plumbing's not there. Sometimes the sewage is running out underneath the house. We've gotten code enforcement involved in that, and they've been able to take these folks to court, prosecute some of them receive fines. So I think I'd reach out to both of those departments if you believe there's an issue in the neighborhood. Regarding the affordable housing, we are making some great strides, and hopefully in the very near future we'll start being able to get a lot more of that engaged. We build a lot of houses, a lot of apartment complex, and really Macon-Bibb County is kind of leading the way in Middle Georgia for new build. We're very excited about that. It hadn't happened in the future before, but I think people are starting to realize that we have a low cost of living here. We have a lot to do with our quality of life and have a lot of jobs that's been brought to our area. And you're going to have some growing pains. So I think the affordable housing we're going to have on board is going to take care of a lot of those issues.
And you've been working with the unhoused population since before you even took office. And there's been development at Brookdale Resource Center with new showers and then that garden that's producing. But when it comes to these hot days, it used to be that the county would open up cooling shelters here or there in a gymnasium or something. But this last go round, and pretty much even in the cold time, it's been kind of handled by Daybreak during the day and then Salvation Army and Brookdale kind of picking up the slack. Is that sufficient, do you think? Can the county do more or should do more?
Well, I think it's sufficient. I think we have a resource guide. If you look at that, it's probably as large as any that you'll have. Over 30 different places you can go to get out of the heat. A lot of times people go to the library, to be honest with you. That's one of our top locations that people kind of go there. They can read, they can get out of the heat, get out of the elements. Brookdale's certainly leading the way. We have the Hello House around back where you can get out of the weather for a whole day, and the next day you're back out. Been some recent challenges, of course, we mentioned before with the Salvation Army, but I do believe that we have sufficient areas there for heating, for cooling. But people have to know where to get the information, and we have a fabulous resource guide that we've got out there. Our attempts to count those that are experiencing homelessness and the project we have going on with technology there, it's going to do a great job about getting them all the available information they need through an app as well. So I do think we're adequately taking care of the needs, and certainly you say you can always do better, but I think that we've really checked that box.
We have another comment too about the trash and rubbish that's still out there on the streets. What's the latest with the Clean Streets Matter campaign?
Continues to do a great job. I think we'll keep making it beautiful along with our Parks and Beautification, our Public Works, our Solid Waste are doing an excellent job there. You know, we wouldn't have this trash problem if we didn't have people throwing trash, right? This is not the government running around throwing trash out there. We'd rather use your tax dollars in another more productive way than going out there every day and picking up trash. So, you know, people need to get the word out and need to teach their kids not to throw trash out there. I can count the numerous times that I go down the road and see someone throw it out into the woods, to a curb, at the stop sign. I blow my horn at them and ask them, you know, what's going on here? And certainly it's hard to monitor that. It's hard to prosecute that. There's not a camera out there that's going to catch, you know, that you're going to be able to pay for, that you can catch people throwing trash out there. But we do have some of those coming on board, and we have caught people doing that. We're going to start prosecuting those folks as we can. But really, it's education. People got to take personal responsibility and be held accountable for their own actions in our own community. And unfortunately, some of these people are traveling through, some of them just don't care.
And there's still illegal dumping, even though you have the convenience centers for people to actually dump that stuff in a legal way.
Right, but we've seen the decline on those, so we are happy about that. You're going to continue to have those for people who want to avoid doing any kind of work, and they know a spot that they used to have that they dump it through. So that's an education and also a prosecution effort that we have to make. But we're seeing fewer far between those illegal dumps now, which is a great thing for us.
What about mowing and clearing the rights of way? Are there independent contractors that the city has hired to kind of supplement what's going on? How is that working, and is it just the summer growing season that we're seeing some overgrown areas?
Well, it's a combination of all of it. When you have a lot of rain and you got the heat that you have here in South Georgia, you're going to have a lot of grass growing up. We try to supplement some of that with spray, and kind of reduces the amount of cuts that you have to do. But quite honestly, there's just not enough people, not enough funds to cut the grass as you would at your house every other week, right? So we try to hit it as many times as we can. We have some new programs coming on. We hired outside vendors, some minority vendors, to go do some of that work. Giving them certain contracts to do. We have a lot of grass cutting to do in Macon-Bibb County. And you know, state has some state highways they help cut, but don't give enough cuts that we need as well. So we're looking for more creative ways. We put a lot more money in the last couple of years in our budget to take care of those needs.
We're running out of time, but potholes, is this not a time of year to do that with the asphalt? And what about the status of some of GDOT's roundabout projects?
Well, the roundabouts are going through right now. They're going through all their design phases. They're working on those. Potholes, we recently did an RFP out there, had a company that gave us some prices on doing some professional potholes. I think we're going to start seeing that. You may see something about it, like you do our blighted houses in the very near future. So we want people to know the work that we're doing, the roads that we're paving. That's a long process to go through to pave roads. That's why you're usually looking at last year's roads you're doing this year, and it's a whole process. But it takes that, but once we get started on this, we just like the blight. We're going to tackle those potholes like we did the blight. We're going to tackle road pavings like we did the blight, and you're going to start to see a very good rollout of that coming out this year, because we've more than tripled, quadrupled the number of money that we're putting on these roads, and I think you're going to see a big difference in the near future.
We have about 30 seconds left, but what are the status of the new speed limit cameras around schools now that school's getting ready to open? Last month you mentioned that more were coming.
Right, we've got at least one charter school and 3 private schools that are coming on board at the beginning of the school, so we're excited about that, keeping people safe, keeping our children safe in the community. You'll have an educational program that's going to be rolled out by Chris Ford and his staff in the very near future to let us know, kind of remind people what they already know, that you got to, when the lights are on, you got to reduce speed. When they're not, you still have to observe the speed limit. You can't go over 10 miles per hour. So we're in the middle of that process now, and of course, the hope is to add them to a lot more of the public schools in the very near future too, as soon as we get all the documentation signed and get the signage and as well as the lights up as well.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for joining us once again, and thank you for sending in your questions. Always, mercerccj@gmail.com, and we will get you some answers next month. Thanks for joining us.